Well, this is a first for me, creating a resination tutorial using this little Aussie shape. It was sent to me by Le Rez Expressions and I've been saving it for Australia Day. It's coming up very soon, so I hope that I do the country justice. Let's see. So I'll pour equal parts of the resin and hardener. I'm using art resin because it doesn't have any VOCs. I've been stirring it for 5 minutes so it's crystal clear, and I'll mix my sand first. This is just white sand I purchased from online from an aquarium. It's called sugar white sand. I've been getting asked a lot since my last video, so I wanted to mention that. Now I did prime this board with white gesso and made sure it's completely dry before you start. So I leave it in the sun to dry. And the little turtles and dolphins I drew by hand and then painted them with black acrylic paint and silver metallic paint. Now if you can't draw, there is a sticker option. Susanna from Le Rez Expressions sent me some new colours, iridescent jade being one of them, so I'm really excited to try these out for the first time. And I will say that it mixed very well. Sometimes those powders you end up with the little flakes, but I didn't have any. They must have been a really fine powder. And wait till you see this colour, steel blue. Look at it, it's just amazing. It's so shimmery as well. Hopefully you'll get to see it on film. So the general rule is to mix about 5 to 10% of pigment to resin. Mine's looking like I've added too much pigment. Because I used it for the first time, I wasn't quite sure how much to add, and I got a bit too carried away with how amazing it was looking. I just started pouring it in the cup. But as you can see, the sand layer is still wet. I applied this pigment immediately after I applied the sand. Generally, I wait for the sand to dry and I do another layer over it. But in this case, I didn't feel like I wanted to. I wanted to try this approach and get some of that green to just blend into the sand. With artwork, I tend to go off my emotions and go with what feels right and use my intuition rather than my head. Well, not all the time anyway. I think there's a time and place for both. And as you can see, I do like using the heat gun to blend my colours. I like it because I get that watery, flowing watery movement, and it also, you don't get like brush marks, even though it's more like stick marks, in all that pearlescent colour, because yeah, as you can see, they really show up texture. And I'm really loving the texture in this actually. It's working really well. And now I can just drop some of that, sprinkle some of that sand on. In fact, you could have even not pre-mixed the sand as I did earlier and instead just drop the sand onto clear resin. And I'm choosing rose quartz crystals for the unconditional love energy. I want to infuse that into this piece. In fact, years ago I learnt that there's different chakras around the planet, whether you're open to this or not. Just mute it if you're not. The different chakras around the planet and different countries are situated within each. And Australia, from what I hear, is situated or located within the heart chakra of the planet. So I'll honour that today with the rose quartz crystals, and also what's beach art without some shells. I'm going to just bring a touch of colour into this. I'm going to use this new beautiful pink velvet from Le Rez. First time trying this as well, and it's just beautiful. I'm going to place it around all those crystals just so it looks like the colours seeping out of it. And this is the first layer. There will be 2 layers to this piece. So on the second layer, after it's dried, that's when I will pour the white and create the waves. And I'm just loving how that water is just pooling down the bottom and it's just flowing. I love it when resin just does its own thing. You've just got to let it be and watch what it does, because if you try and compete with it, you're not going to win. I'm telling you now. You just have to let go and surrender to where it's flowing. To a certain point, of course, there's times when you do have to step in and make some adjustments, but generally, I think that the best work comes from when you just let go and let the painting show you what it wants to do. Now that this first layer is done, I can use a blowtorch to pop the bubbles, and now this is actually a placemat, I should mention. This Australian shape, that's a coaster that I'm working on now. And my one, I decided to make it a wall art because it's too 3-dimensional, like your plate just wouldn't sit even on it. So maybe if I do another one, I'll make it a placemat and have it just a smooth surface. So I'm applying this diamond dust now from Le Rez, and I was on the fence about whether I'll use it or not. And actually I'm unsure. Did it need it? Am I overdoing it? I'm just not sure, but it's done now. There's no taking it off. So it's time to just leave it now overnight so it's dried enough that I can pour the next layer on. Now I did sand the first layer before pouring this clear resin on it. And I only sanded back the area where I'm pouring this second layer because there are scratch marks, but they will get covered up with the resin you pour over it. It just magically disappears. Now this time I only used clear resin and one colour. It's the iridescent jade, just a little bit of it, just to give a bit of depth so it's not looking so flat in the ocean. I thought if I used the blue it might be too much. And I'll blend those colours with the heat gun again, making sure it's not too hot. I don't need it too hot for now, and I don't want to burn that resin. I dropped a little spot of resin there, so I'm just covering it up and fixing my wave how I want it. For my white wave, I'll use Angel White by Le Rez. I get some lovely lacing with the combination with art resin. Now I let that sit in the cup for longer, like maybe 10 minutes after pouring that clear and the iridescent jade. That was just so that it was nice and thick. You can see when I poured that line, it's a thick line. Otherwise, when you blow the white out, if it's not thick enough, it'll just blend into the resin underneath it. And if it looks good initially, after a while, it won't be able to retain its cell structure. Now, I just want to get some whitewash up the top here. I don't want it to be a straight line like the first waves. I want it to be broken up, so I'll use the heat gun just to break it up more and make it look natural and choppy water. I want that kind of feel. I'm losing my dolphins a little bit, unfortunately. You can see them, but I would have liked them to be seen a little bit more than that. If I had painted another one further down, that would have been perfect. But you can see how the lacing's starting to form on that first line that I poured. It just takes a little while. Sometimes it can take 5 to 10 minutes to show up, so be patient and just wait. Don't keep hitting it with that blowtorch because I've done that because you could burn it. Now, speaking of disasters, I didn't pour that line down low enough, so I've got that sanded back resin showing through where there's scratch marks. So I'm now having to cover up those marks with some clear resin and extend my wave down, or put a second wave down, but that means that first wave will no longer be three-dimensional because I'm having to level it out. And I know that when I blow this wave, I'm going to end up blowing some of that other wave, which is fine. I'm just going to let it do its thing and it be a natural wave. Maybe in the long run it turns out for the best. Sometimes things are a blessing in disguise, and I think in this case it probably was. And this time I'm going to have my heat gun on a medium speed. I don't want it high because, as I said, I'm trying not to disrupt it too much. But having said that, the resin is thickening up because I'm coming to the end of the working time, so you kind of need a bit of pressure behind that heat gun. So I'm not done yet. I'm going to now do this little coaster. It's so cute compared to the other one. And I'm going to leave this heat gun on a medium fan as well because otherwise I'll just push it all off the top. You can always come along with some white to smooth out those lines and to thicken it up so that it's more three-dimensional. So I'm not done yet. It's the finishing touches time. This is when I say, okay, the foundations are down. Now I get to have a good look at it and look at what else needs to be done. How else can I elevate this piece and make it look complete? Now I can finally show you the final result, and let's see if you can see all that beautiful colour. If you do have any questions, please drop them in the comments, and I really appreciate you watching and leaving all your feedback. I love reading it. And my name's Tracey. Thank you so much for watching.